This is Popular Front, a podcast focused on the niche details of modern warfare and underreported conflict with me, Jake Hanrahan. For this episode, we're speaking to researcher and analyst Tom Lord. He's going to be talking to us about what is basically a perfect storm of conflict right now occurring in Greece. There has been a hunger strike by a former communist militant. There has been clashes because of that. There's very, very vicious anti-police violence clashes. And there's also been clashes because the government are trying to put security forces into universities where they previously committed massacres. There's a lot going on. If you like what we're doing here at Popular Front, please do consider supporting us at patreon.com/popularfront. There's been this situation with the protests for the N17 hunger striker, and now there are new anti-police protests or anti-police violence protests. I know the kind of right-wing media in Greece is trying to say that the both protests are the same thing, but I understand there's a little bit of difference, and then there's also a lot of convergence as well. I guess let's just start, the recent wave of clashes in Greece, which have been particularly bad this time around. Maybe let's just start with the N17 stuff, like why did they happen?
And it all ties into itself. So for those who aren't familiar, the revolutionary organization 17 November is categorized as a red terrorist organization. They're a Marxist guerrilla, Marxist-Leninist urban guerrilla outfit that started in 1975. Greece was under a military dictatorship called the junta from 1967 until 1974. And then after the return to democracy, a segment of the student, radical youth movement, student movement that had protested against the neo-fascist junta, they weren't satisfied with the terms of the new constitution, and they also saw in their, the influence of the foreign finger of the UK and the United States. And so a lot of anti-imperialist, anti-colonial, left-wing Marxist youth went underground and started forming terrorist outfits or urban guerrilla outfits, however you want to look at them. 17N was the most prolific of them. Their operational debut was on the 23rd of December, 1975. They shot and killed the brand new CIA chief of station, Richard Welch, in front of his home and his driver. And then the group had a couple more operations. The real meat of their operational career was in the 1980s. They were extraordinarily active at that time. They had a couple of very high-profile attacks in the 1990s, including they fired a mortar round at the U.S. Embassy in Athens, which has been a very popular target for Greece's urban guerrillas, especially on the left and the post-left. And they were elusive, and they were so elusive that even among the Greek population that had a lot of sympathy for their anti-colonial, anti-imperial campaign, there became a lot of conspiracy theory. Like they were, a segment of the population thought that they were being run by the Greek or the Greek intelligence services or the American CIA. The Greek right thought that they were being run by the left-wing politician Andreas Papandreou. They were very elusive, and then in 2002, on a pretty normal Saturday evening, around 10 p.m., as Greeks were kind of out dining or repairing to various patios, cafes to hear some music and have a few drinks, a large blast shook the port of Piraeus, just south of Athens. Police arrived there and found a badly injured man. Now, bombings, as well as the guerrillas that injured themselves, and they're not terribly rare in Athens, but the contents of this guy's backpack were certainly interesting. He had a couple of hand grenades and a .38 caliber revolver that had been taken from a police officer during his assassination in the 1980s that was claimed by 17N, and it looked like finally Greek intelligence services and Greek authorities had unmasked and captured a member of 17N, and this man was Savas Hiros. And whether he was tortured or whether, through various prosecutorial procedures, he gave up the outfit. And so 17N's leader and founder, Alexandros Giotopoulos, he's somewhat of a legend in the European left. 17N themselves are a legendary group. There have been a lot of red terrorist groups in Europe, none that lasted as long as 17N or had just this like very high-profile resume, and we'll get into that if you'd like. But really quickly, they were founded by Alexandros Giotopoulos. He was a French-born Greek, Marxist, Leninist radical. His father was actually, a secretary to Leon Trotsky, and then led the Greek Trotskyist party of the Archaeo-Marxists. He was Dimitris. So you and I, our conversation is going to center around a figure who became known as the operational chief of 17N, and his name is Dimitris Koufoudinas. And that is because up until about 7 hours ago, I heard he's ended his hunger strike, but this man was on hunger strike, and he came very close to being the first person to die of a hunger strike in Europe since the provisional IRA leader Bobby Sands, 1981, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, he wasn't a leader though. He was just, he wasn't even that much of a big noise, to be honest. He was the leader of the hunger strikes, I guess, though. Yeah. Yeah,
sorry about that. Yeah, in the prison wing. Forgive me.
Yeah.
I apologize. And that's not a totally accurate statement either, because I'm not sure whether it was in European Istanbul or Asian Istanbul, but a couple of Turks have died. A member of the group Yorum, they're a folk group that's associated with DHKPC, a communist terrorist group. And then there was a human rights lawyer that also died. So anyways, Dimitris Koufoudinas came very close to dying of hunger strike, and he enjoys a tremendous amount of sympathy and popularity with a large segment of the Greek population. He himself didn't actually join 17N until 1983. He moved to Athens. He was born in 1958 in a small village called Terpni up in northern Greece. And he moved to Athens as a teenager, as a young man. He was about 13 or 14 years old, and he moved there at an extraordinary time. It was in the middle of the junta, and what he saw, being a provincial kid and then suddenly urbanized, he saw youth movements, kids his age, rising up very bravely against a serious military authoritarian regime, and disappearing off the streets and getting shot and injured. Bad things were happening to them. They were being denied careers. It was not a good path, but he was inspired by that. And he was a early acolyte of Andreas Papandreou. He was a member of the PASOK. They're a left-wing socialist party in Greece that's become rather centrist as Greek politics go. But and they've dissolved. They've become something else now. But he was a PASOK member. And then in 1983, he was at the University of Athens in the 70s, but by 83 he had met like-minded youth who pulled him into 17N. And it was a pretty closed group. There were only about 19 members that were charged in 2002. And his first operation that we know of and that he was charged with, this tactic will be very familiar to you, but he was on the rear of a motorbike or driving, and one of his comrades, they followed U.S. Army Master Sergeant Robert Judd. He was driving from downtown Athens to the air base there outside of Athens, and they pulled up alongside his vehicle, and they shot 3 times in the vehicle. They hit him once in the lung, once in the wrist, and then the other round embedded itself somewhere in the door. And he actually managed to drive himself to the airbase, and he was rescued. It was one of the sloppier jobs that 17N ever pulled off. And then, like I said, in the 80s, they had an insane career that included the targeting of Greek industrialists, Greek newspaper publishers, foreign diplomats. They were a really nationalistic group, and for a lot of our generation, this may not make a tremendous amount of sense, but 1970s terrorist organizations were very nationalistic. That is, red terrorist organizations. They were very nationalistic. There's also a huge nexus between them and the Palestinian cause. So nationalism and left-wing political violence were not mutually exclusive.
That's what the left has forgotten now. Like, if you try and be slightly proud of your culture and your people, if it's not Palestine or somewhere like that, now the left, or at least the European left, will absolutely, scream nationalism at you. But they forget that actually back in them days, it was a big part of like leftist causes. I mean, it was more, I would argue that it was more a patriotic thing. It wasn't like, nationalism, which in my opinion is like, I love the government and the state here and blah, blah. It was like patriotic, like, we like our people, we like our way of life, and we want to live that freely without the state on our neck, you know what I'm saying, or an occupier or whatever. But yeah, it's a very different time.
That's beautifully stated. Yeah, so like as the IRA can be thought of as a nationalist group that then adopted, and I'm going to butcher this and you're going to have to correct me, but then adopted some left-wing ideologies later on in the mid-20th century because, they're ultimately fighting what British occupation. For the Greeks have a term that's parakratos, which is, it's like the deep state, but their deep state, they've always, even the craziest groups in Greece have always had the lucidity to recognize, all right, our government are a bunch of bumbling, corrupt fucks, and it's really either the British or the United States later on, or various foreign fingers hovering over our country. Prior to that, it would have been Ottoman Turkey that's hovering over our country. They're kind of dictating things here. And so the left-wing guerrilla movement, militant movements of the late 20th century were very anti-NATO, anti-US, and they're also very anti-Turkish though, and here's where it does get a bit nationalistic. So how did the junta fall? Well, the junta lost absolute legitimacy. I guess this would be important for your audience too. Why did they decide to name themselves the Revolutionary Organization 17 November? What is that date about? Well, on the 14th of November 1973, the student movement had risen up against the junta, and it was significant. And they started to get mass mobilization in the streets of Athens and Thessaloniki and like Patras and big cities like this from regular Greeks. Just regular citizens were fed up with the fascism and living under an authoritarian government. They wanted democracy. And it culminated on the night of the 17th when the Athens Polytechnio, which is a campus it's an infamous school now, but the students had occupied the campus, and the government's answer was to crash through the gates with a French-made AMX-30 main battle tank. And they killed 24 people, including a young child. It was horrific. And that's where the regime lost legitimacy. But it persisted physically for another year, and they launched a coup in neighboring Cyprus. And they had this Panhellenic policy where they were going to unite the island with Greece. The Turks lost their shit and invaded with tens of thousands of troops. It was a war in which the Greek Cypriots got smashed, and then the island was politically bifurcated. And that's when the regime collapsed. And so they returned to democracy. And this is really significant. The very first party to take on the new democratic mandate was called Neo Demokratia, or New Democracy, which is the current ruling party. And this is why people are drawing some very erudite connections between the junta and today. And at first I thought it was rather dramatic, but now I think it's perfectly appropriate comparison. So what's going on with this hunger strike and Dimitris Koufoudinas? So the operational leader in 2002, after Savas Heroes bungled that bombing. Well, anyways, so really quickly, the organization clearly named themselves after the 17th of November, 1 year afterwards. So the bombing was bungled by Savas Heroes, and he gives up everyone. And the operational leader, the guy who's been behind planning, targeting, and even carried out a lot of operations himself, including the assassination of Pavlos Bakoyannis, who is the brother-in-law of the current prime minister and the father of the current mayor of Athens. Dimitris Koufoudinas just comes and turns himself in to the police very coolly in Athens. He's like wearing a leather jacket and glasses, and he just walks right into the police station and says, "I am Dimitris Koufoudinas, the operational leader of 17N, and I'm here to turn myself in to the police." And he took responsibility for all of the crimes for which 17N was accused, but then in the way that ideologues do in court. I won't get into this because it's a mess. There was some pretty wild. Anyways, the testimony of people who commit to this sort of lifestyle often defies the procedures that we understand in court and such like that. So, the group is dismantled, and Koufoudinas goes to jail, and he's sent to Korydallos prison along with 19 other members. He's given 25-year sentence and on top of that, 11 life sentences, if I'm not mistaken. And for most of that time, 16 years of that period, he lives in the basement of an infamous maximum security prison in a suburb of Athens called Korydallos. And the government actually built a wing in the basement just to house members of 17N. They didn't want them liaising with other prisoners or spreading their ideology or anything like that. And it was, I guess the conditions were very rough. That I couldn't really speak on, but it was a horrible place. And that's where they lived for just 16 years. Well, in 2015, the coalition of the radical left, Synaspismos Rizosπαστικής Aristarchas, or Syriza, this is a party in Greece that's made up of like 15 smaller movements, they were given a political mandate. And they led the country until their electoral loss in 2019. And one of the kind of final things that the prime minister and leader of that party, Alexis Tsipras, did was he moved Dimitris Koufaginas to a comfier agricultural prison, like a farming prison, kind of in the countryside of Attica. It was a nice place. He had done this to a lot of convicted left-wing terrorists, and then convicted post-left anarchist terrorists. And he was moving them out to kind of these comfier farming prisons. And he had also given, I think this will blow some people's mind who are not familiar with the Greek justice system. Dimitris Koufaginas is responsible for, I think he has those 11 life sentences because that's how many lives he took according to the Greek government, like outside of his planning, like he was involved in operations that took 11 lives. The guy's killed people regardless of what your feelings of him are. And he was granted 6 furloughs from prison from 2017 to 2019, which means a dude who's charged with one of the highest capital crimes in the state was allowed to go home, visit family, and kick it for a little bit, which is crazy. That's insane. And it's very much seen, part of the dysfunction of the very young country of Greece, which only declared its independence exactly 200 years ago, 1821, is that it's very clan-based and it's a spoils system democracy and it's very tit for tat and I guess vengeful. So a feature of that is that when the left is in power, those allies of theirs who might be part of the extra parliamentary movement or just the street movement, they will be their sentences will be reduced or the state will show leniency towards them, while being harsher on the opponents who are charged with the same crimes. So we saw the very final days of the Golden Dawn trial play out underneath the Syriza government, while at the same time a lot of leniency was being given to members of 17N. And I'm not trying to make a false equivocation. Like Golden Dawn is a neo-Nazi party. They're awful. They're a terrorist group in their own right, and they should be punished. But it was a weird thing. There was I guess I don't want to entirely go down that road, but clearly there was a lot of favor that was being shown towards 17N. And so when this new government was elected, New Democracy, the retribution against the extra-parliamentary left and the left-wing street movements in Greece was immediate, and it was brutal. It started with the crackdown on squatted buildings, a lot of which are public. But, the New Democracy government, they were elected in July 2019. Kyriakos Mitsotakis, he comes from one of these famous political clans in Greece. As I briefly mentioned, his brother-in-law, Pavlos Bakoyannis, who's also the father of his nephew and mayor of Athens, was assassinated by 17N for his alleged role in the Bank of Crete scandal, which really pissed off working-class Greeks on the right and the left. The Mitsotakis administration really rode this wave of law and order policy, and quite a lot like we had here in the United States, as well as various nationalistic causes. So right before the summer right before New Democracy, in 2018, right before New Democracy was elected, the big hot topic for nationalists in Greece was immigration and also the Presbyterian agreement, or the naming issue with Northern Macedonia. And I won't get into that because that's a whole other mess. But in 2018, there was an agreement struck between the Greek government and the government of Macedonia called the Prespa Accord, where now Macedonia is allowed to be called North Macedonia, and that fulfills their accession requirements into NATO, and Greece no longer has a beef with them. What that meant for the country on the streets was hundreds of thousands of nationalists, far right-wing Greeks, on the streets of Thessaloniki, which is the capital of their own province called Macedonia, and a segment of this large street demonstration that was pro-Greece, anti-Macedonia, call it anything else other than Macedonia, that is the former republic. They marched down the streets and they burned down this very old squat called Libertatia, which was an anarchist squat. And very cruelly, it was a building that had survived the Nazis, for God's sake, and has a history with the left-wing underground, and it had been squatted by anarchists since the early 2000s, and then it was burned to the ground, burned to a cinder. And New Democracy, before they got into power, they said nothing about this. They even kind of quietly applauded this, and then the subsequent summer, as soon as they were elected, very fierce state crackdowns against squats going back to the early 2000s, to 2004 in one case, started, and they persisted into this year, even during the pandemic. And so the current government's policy has been a series of lockdowns. I think Greece is on its fifth COVID-19 related lockdown, with huge exceptions given to the elite and tourists, etc. Whereas just like regular Greeks gathering for any reason in public squares are being beaten and harassed by this infamous police unit that I hope you and I have an opportunity to speak about in a moment. And a quick note on the Greek police. The Hellenic police force is a state-controlled force with a lot of various units, and two ubiquitous units are the MAT, a riot unit, in green fatigues and white helmets and shields. They're permanently stationed for crowd control. And the other one, who we're going to talk about here in just a moment, is the Delta unit. They're a motorcycle unit, and these fellows have been going around and harassing and beating Greeks all summer for gathering and for violating social distance measures and the lockdowns, and they've been cracking down on squats. And the fucked up thing about this is that, in addition to being a pandemic, a lot of these squats hold refugee families and are organized into units where they're like living spaces for refugee families who created their pandemic bubble in there, and now the police are tossing people out on the streets and fucking that up. So there's been a real retributive policy of neo-democratia, and the left and post-left are making the pretty astute analysis that New Democracy was the party that took on this janky constitution in 1975 after the junta, reluctantly gave up power, and that New Democracy absorbed a lot of the officers and structures responsible for the junta, and that prior to that, it has its history. Its history goes back to Nazi collaborators during the Third Reich occupation of Greece, and so as an immediate policy of New Democracy, in addition to cracking down on the squats and cleaning up the streets of lawlessness, as they say, and cracking down on the anarchists and the marches, which they've absolutely marshaled COVID-19, the pandemic, to their cause. They've used it, as other authoritarian governments have, to crack down on political assembly and organization. They also immediately zeroed in on Dimitris Koufoudinas, the chief of 17N.
Yeah, let's talk about that now. So like you said, they zeroed in on him. This was initially why there were so many clashes, new clashes again recently, with all of that as the backdrop, as you've mentioned. He went on a hunger strike. Why did all this happen? What did they do?
Yeah, so the New Democracy government, they passed a law, and they said anyone convicted of terrorism charges, they're not only going to be transferred out of these comfy little farm prisons, they're not going back to those places where they got comfortable in Korydallos, which is Dimitris Koufoudinas' demand. No. They're going to a brand new maximum security prison that's becoming like a quarantine island for left-wing terrorists called Domokos prison, left-wing and post-left terrorists. It's Domokos prison. Not a nice place. Korydallos is a hell place, but if you had been there for 16 years and you kind of like developed a rapport and like a routine and all that, it's your thing. You got it. It's going on. So Dimitris Kouloudinas is being transferred out of farm prison to Domokos, and his demand was, no, send me back to Korydallos, to the 17N facility in that basement, my dungeon, and just let me die there. And the New Democracy government very cruelly said, no, we're not going to honor your demand. And then the hunger strike began and ran, I think, 68 days until today.
So they've basically put him into like a shitty prison, and he's gone on a hunger strike. And then we saw this kind of unusual situation for Greece, I think at least, where from what I was seeing on the kind of wire, if you like, there were anarchist groups, there were communist groups, post-left, all of these kind of groups were kind of almost had solidarity with each other when usually they fucking hate each other. I was seeing it was like everybody coming out and saying like, right, this guy is on hunger strike, we're all gonna fucking clash at the same time, sort of thing. That's what it looked like to me. I mean, how did it actually unfold?
So there's an interesting relationship between Dimitris Kouloudinas and the anarchists. The anarchists are a very big part of the political profile of Greece, and a great deal of them are post-left, though a lot of them are left-wing anarchists. And they have always, despite the fact that he's a Marxist-Leninist, Dimitris Kouloudinas has had really interesting interviews in jail, in prison, as well as communiques and letters that said he would have explored anarchism with some seriousness had that been an available political ideology for him at the time. Now, Savas Heros, the guy who bungled the bombing of 17N, as we spoke about in our last conversation, was actually going to collaborate with CCF after a prison break, and they were going to bomb a section of Korydallos, and then the post-left anarchist group CCF was going to have him bumped off. But so Kouloudinas enjoys tremendous sympathy from a huge segment of Greek society, whether it's from just like your working class hard hat Greek with some that votes left, or like your underground guerrilla, or just the students who show up weekly for peaceful demonstrations and direct action, things like that. I mean, the guy's he's considered a revolutionary icon in the country. Half the country considers him a terrorist, and the other half considers him a revolutionary icon, because there's really good work by a ethnographer named Kirtsolu is her last name, and she was like walking around Greece and asking, she was conducting ethnography on how Greeks felt about 9/11, and a really popular response from Greeks was, it's horrible that 3,000 people died. However, America goes around stirring up all of these places all the time and expects not to get bit. So fuck America. It's terrible that 3,000 people died, but we totally sympathize. The Americans are fuckers. And that was kind of the mood among Greeks. And so 17N was appreciated once they were found out, once they were captured. And it's like, oh, these are real guys and gals. And these are not only real people, these are like fucking simple ass Greeks from like farm villages and shit that dropped out of college. I mean, if they're being supported by left-wing officers in the military or whatever, that's fantastic for them, and it hasn't been found out. But these are like simple, average, working-class Greeks who took a serious swipe at the Americans, the Turks, the newspapers, the industrialists. And here it sounds like I'm romanticizing it, but that was the sentiment in Greece. And so presently, Greeks on the streets from a huge variety of backgrounds have been protesting. It's not just in Greece. There's been covert bombings in Germany, which there's a huge relationship between the German left and post-left and the Greek left and post-left. Italy, Switzerland, the UK. The US hasn't picked up on it here. I don't, whatever our left or post-left are doing, that's their shit.
Probably trying to cancel someone.
So there's been banner drops and, gas canister bombings, serious attacks on like Mitsotakis institutions and things like that. But then there's this other component. So because the junta slaughtered 24 people on the 17th of November 1973, part of the new constitution was, hey, police are not allowed to enter Greek university campuses without the express and very rare consent of a university rector, and that never fucking happens. And there's some pretty bad stuff that goes on Greek campuses. I mean, there was a gal that was found dead on Aristotle University, Thessaloniki campus, like OD'd and perhaps possibly the victim of some other kind of horrific violence that, I don't want to think about. Some bad shit happens on Greek campuses, just to average folks who are trying to go get an education. But the Greeks have very good reason not to want the police on their campus anymore. So the Minister of Public Order, and there's so much tying into this. The Minister of Public Order, whose name is Michalos Chrysochidis, he was a member of PASOK, the left-wing group that then challenged New Democracy in the 80s and took over. We're going to fast forward through all this. If people want to look him up, he's really interesting. He's known as the terrorist hunter in Greece because when he was the head of the same bureau, he's kind of like our district attorney in the United States. I don't know what your equivalent there is in the UK because I'm ignorant, but it was his administration. It was under his watch that 17N was brought down. And then directly after, there was a group with more anarchist leanings ideologically called Revolutionary Struggle. And they planned some bombings on the Evelpidon complex during the 17N trial. And they also fired an RPG at the U.S. Embassy in 2007 to kind of, answer back or one up the mortar attack on the embassy. So Michalis Chrysochidis this is so fascinating, dude. The ideological opposite of New Democracy within the parliamentary structure of Greece is, I guess, Syriza, but it always used to be PASOK. PASOK were the socialists. Yet, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the current prime minister, as soon as he took his mandate in 2019, he named as his Minister of Public Order Michalis Chrysochidis. Michalis Chrysochidis, because he had brought down these two terrorist organizations, accepted and then got kicked out of his party. And PASOK has changed its name to something like the Greek Movement for Progress or something. I haven't caught up, but he got kicked out of the party. So this is fascinating. All right, so Greek police have been forbidden from entering Greek campuses since 1975 because of the massacre. Now, Michalis Chrysochidis, who just gave up his left-wing credentials and is the New Democracy Minister of Public Order, he and the Minister of Education just announced this, the formation of this new body. This is ridiculous. It's called the University Foundation Protection Team, which it's very soft wording for basically the new the campus Hellenic Police Unit. And the Hellenic Police have like 19 units, and all of them have a very poor reputation. So we're going to get to this video in 1 second. I'm sorry for all this background bullshit, but the government announces this nonsense, and the Greeks rightly see through this. The University of Foundation Protection Team, when your government has slaughtered people on this in a university campus and killed 15-year-old kids, you're like, fuck this. This is no good. I'm mad. So piggybacking off of the mass mobilization of the pro-Koufoudinas demonstrations, which had been happening daily, as it reached like the 51st day of Koufoudinas' hunger strike and his kidneys started to fail and his body started to toxify, there was just hundreds of thousands, a crush of Greeks in the street from a variety of political backgrounds. And the police crackdown on these demonstrations was brutal, and it was all under the auspices of COVID-19. It was absolutely brutal. And this is coming at the same time as the announcement of this very unpopular bill. So just last weekend, last Sunday, I want to say, this video came out on Twitter. And the Delta unit, who's this motorcycle unit, they ride two per bike. They have white helmets, and then they're in all black, like kind of armor, like plated armor. And they cruise about, and they're harassing this family in this square in the New Smyrna borough of Athens. And video emerges of them with their collapsible batons just beating the hell out of this lad. And he's screaming, "It hurts, please stop." And like they're landing some bone crackers on this guy.
Right, and this guy is unarmed. He's just fucking out there. He's not an anarchist. He's not an activist. He's just there, right? He's just trying to be outside, and the police are just like, nah, bang, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. And there have been a few, that's not the first one too. So Dimitris Koufoudinas' son was arrested, and they were brutal with him, even though he was peacefully protesting from what I saw. And then just a lot of regular bystanders would just come out in the streets to watch the Koufoudinas marches, and then cops walking by them en route to engage the protesters would just sling a couple of shots at people who were just like standing there eating like a croissant or something, or having like a frappe. Like I saw him like hit a 65-year-old guy in the forearm with a baton who's like, what the fuck? Like, he was stunned. And so it's been brutal. And so now the demonstrations have turned into largely anti-police demonstrations, right? And what night was it? You got to help me out here, because this is all like bleeding into. Was it Tuesday night when shit hit the fan, when it looked like it was like back in 2012? And then like I wanted you to go into, there's a great little bit on Vice Greece or Vice World, I think, on the hooligan aspect of this, but an anti-police, after that lad was beaten and the video hit social media.
So it happened on the weekend, and I think Monday it was kicking off, and then it carried on into Tuesday, and I think that's when people really started to take note.
Yes, and shit hit the fan, and there was an organized anti-police violence demo, anti-police brutality demo that marched through the streets. But then, and this is the interesting bit, and I thought it was just like, kind of the weird anomalies that come out of the Greek street scene. But no, apparently several rival ultras groups set aside their differences, who are rather, I mean, they can be political in Greece, but I think apolitically, they set aside their differences and they said, let's just go fuck up the police.
Yeah, well, since you were telling me about that, I ended up actually speaking to someone kind of associated, and some of them actually were like anti-fascist ultras. Now, I had some like American people being like, anti-fascist are like football hooligans. How can it be such a thing? It's like, well, like in Europe, like, our kind of militant leftists are fucking, like, a lot of them are tough guys from rough areas. They're genuinely, like, about it, you know what I mean? So it's actually not that rare. There's a lot of them actually across Europe, but these guys, like, yeah, like you said, some of them weren't, some of them were, and you're right, they just said, look, fuck it, let's get together, let's go and batter the police. And I mean, the footage, I mean, you see that guy fly kicks a police officer off his bike, they're kicking him in the head, like, they chase off all the police on their bikes with petrol bombs. Like, it was mad. Like, I know people were saying to me, clashes happen all the time in Greece, you know that, but this looked a lot more serious than the kind of weekend clashes, you know what I mean?
I've been closely watching political violence and writing about it in Greece since 2008, and outside of 2012, what happened on like Monday or Tuesday night was extraordinary. That was nuts, man.
Yeah, it was serious. So basically, it's in a situation now where all in the space of like 6 months, you've got the N17 or this, November 17 hunger strike, clashes from that, then clashes from the government trying to put police officers in the universities, which, we know they're not meant to do after they massacred people there. And now there's this anti-police brutality clashes. What do you think is going to happen there? This seems like a perfect storm for like a return to very serious militancy in Greece, at least from what I'm seeing from the outside and, having read a bit about it.
So the hunger strike began on January 8th, and the fact that Koufoudinas stopped the strike today really surprised me. It's not his first hunger strike, and he's wrecked his health pretty badly prior to this, but the way I thought it was going to play out, I have this corny-ass term I use called insurgent holidays, where it's like something really like the death of Alexandros Grigoropoulos, a 15-year-old boy in Greece in 2008. Every single year that's observed through peaceful protests and in the evenings, pretty serious levels of violence. The government counts on it. I thought that's what's going to happen. I thought that Koufoudinas was going to die, and that he was going to become a martyr among the post-left and the left-wing culture, and then they were going to observe it, and there was going to be rage in the streets. One thing I want to say, and I know you're on kind of a tight timeline, but one thing I want to say that was really extraordinary about Tuesday night, which shocked the hell out of me, and this is a new component. So, like, one can reasonably predict how what's going to happen on the left and the post-left now. Like, the hunger strike is over, but there's still tons of rage over the university policing bill. We got to see how that's going to play out, and the police violence. And this is something I want to speak on that I've never seen before in Greece. The Delta unit. So that evening, let's agree it was Tuesday night. It might have been Monday, but let's agree it was Tuesday night. And there was a police officer who was knocked off his motorbike, and he was knocked unconscious. His helmet was removed, and this guy was fucked up. He was really messed up. And one way or the other, whether he deserved it, I don't give a shit. There was a human being who was like badly fucked up. The guy was messed up, and his unit, the Delta unit, after that, this is what scared the shit out of me. They were operating beyond command and control. They were filmed cruising around Greek streets screaming, "We're going to kill those motherfuckers." They were like not taking orders from higher structures within the Hellenic police department. They were just going to apartments from whatever intelligence they had gathered, ripping people out of their homes, arresting neighbors who were filming this, beating the shit out of people. And like the Greek media, 80% of which is controlled by the state, and a huge portion of which is alive with New Democracy, was dubbing in and fixing audio. It was crazy. And you as a journalist could speak about like the ethical fuckery and like how crazy that is. But like it was insane. This Delta unit was operating on the street as a right-wing state-sponsored gang.
So they basically went completely rogue on that night and just started going after everyone.
Totally rogue, and it doesn't seem that anyone's reined them in. And I saw that the prime minister was speaking about police reform and body cameras, but like it was terribly shallow, and it doesn't fix the structural problem. What worries me is that like like in Greece right now, like we're creating these we're creating these tribes where there's like retributive violence between the two, and they just take they take events back and forth and they enshrine them. So now that unit of Delta officers will be like, never forget, the day that they hit Stelios in the head with a brick and that they fucked him up and we had to take him to the hospital. We're going to get revenge on those motherfuckers. And then the police will go and beat the shit out of a bunch of innocent people and drag them out of their apartment. And then, working class Greeks will say, those motherfuckers, we're going to firebomb a couple squad cars tonight. And it's just tit for tat. And it doesn't seem like anyone's putting any water on it, man.
Yeah, it seems like, one of the most serious situations there's been for a long time. Now the N17 guy has called off his hunger strike. Do you think that might make a difference? That might kind of dampen it a bit?
It's weird because the Greek left and post-left were drawing tremendous solidarity capital from a huge section of Europe. I mean, like Germany is super active. They were, in Friedrichshain and Kreuzberg neighborhoods of Berlin every single night. There'd be a banner drop. Oh, this is fascinating. Actually, German anarchists busted into the Greek consulate in Berlin and went up to the fourth floor and dropped a banner in solidarity with Kufo-Dinas.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, man. I mean, there have been some pretty serious fire bombings and attacks on state, corporate targets across Europe, and all of the claim. I mean, well over a dozen at this point since February, and he began to strike on January 8th, all in solidarity with Dimitris Kufo-Dinas. So that's going to calm down a bit. And I suppose it'll be more localized now as Greeks battle it out with the state over this new campus policing bill, which, it doesn't look like there's any give on the end of the government. The New Democracy and Mitsotakis administration really has this, solution of just pave over an entire section. I mean, that's like their wording. So you had a great episode with Molly Krobapel that everyone should check out about just the neighborhood of Exarchia. And so like the Greek government's, the current government under New Democracy, their policy is, hey, we need to build a metro station in Exarchia. So the way we get rid of all of these street types and these militants is just pave over the shit. It's just like a restorative gentrification, I guess, is their method. And that's going to require a tremendous amount of police force. And police forces met with extraordinary resistance in Greece. So I don't see this working out.
Yeah, and is this centered in Exarchia as it usually is, or is this a bit bigger than that? From what I saw, it seemed to be all over the place.
What blew everyone's minds about Tuesday night was Nia Smyrni is a very quiet neighborhood, dude. This kind of shit doesn't go on there.
Right, it's in the south of Athens or something, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's like pretty comfy, kind of like bedroom community. It's nice. You hear about some things in Kypseli, which is really hip, and some other areas, but no, this is insane. And there were a lot of just average Greeks too during the march before the ultras came out in the streets, and it was like bedlam. Like when it finally caught our attention, regular Greeks were just on their balconies and saying, "Yeah, we're fucking sick of this shit." And every time there's a like Delta unit dragging people out of their apartment for no reason, regular Greeks will film it. They'll come out on their balconies and they'll say, "Fuck you, stop this malakis," and then the police will go in and arrest them too. It's getting really crazy, and like I said, really hesitant to make comparisons to today and the junta. People love to think that what we're going through today is as brutal as it was earlier in the 20th century with no real context. But I'd say that comparison is getting more accurate by the day.
Yeah, I think the only difference is that it's not like overtly authoritarian in the way that the old guard was, and also like as many people have not been killed yet. You know what I mean? But otherwise, the tactics look the same.
This is the crazy ass thing about the new democracy government, Neo Demokratia, and like Malik Rabapal was brilliantly speaking about how the Karamanlis and then later on the Mitsotakis families had like absorbed like actual collaborating Nazis in their fold. But like New Democracy just had such a Mickey Mouse face. I mean, Mitsotakis is friends with Tom Hanks, for fuck's sake. They hang out and eat dinner, and it's like, but they're brutal as shit. They're like corporate fascists.
Yeah, but you know, they can say we're friends with celebrities, blah blah blah. How are the people that are like not involved with activism and not particularly like radical? How are they seeing all this pan out? I know in the media it's very dead set on demonizing all of the activists and praising the brutality of the police, but generally, you know, your average man and woman, how are they kind of seeing this? Do you know?
I have a few Greek friends who are like great cross sections for the average Greek's like political opinions, and one of whom, when I first met the guy, I was like, "So what do you feel about anarchists? Are you one?" And he said, "I'm too goddamn poor to be an anarchist." You know, he's like, "I'm a poor guy running a shit ass shop. I'm a communist. I vote KKE." And that was so. He's one of those people I asked about this, and he's incredibly critical of a lot of the culture that has come out of the squatted buildings in some sections of Exarchia, and even he though is in absolute sympathy with them. I've heard him have critical words about 17N, but he's like, no, our police are running amok. New Democracy is clearly showing that they care more about tourists and giving out golden visas to rich foreigners than they do fixing the problems here. We have like 35% unemployment. Greeks have every reason to be pissed and in the streets. And instead, he had an interesting position too. This is rather nuanced. He's like, instead, they're using the police to crack down on people and get everyone in line with kind of this enforced low quality of life. This was an interesting. And he said, if you think about who becomes a Greek police officer, it's someone with some of the fewest opportunities, least access to education, and someone who needs a goddamn guaranteed paycheck. And sometimes the Greek police will be on patrol for like months before receiving a check, back pay. And he's like, so they're using the working class with, who have either been forced into the position of being a police officer out of just basic need, or have some ideological sympathy towards the state and the Greek nation, and maybe want to crack a few anarchist goals. They're using the working class to crack down on the working class, and they're creating this new stratum above it of like foreigners with these golden visas who can live here and have like pretty much all rights except for that of the vote.
I read about that. Something like if you buy a house that's like over 300,000 euros, you just become immediately like you get citizenship in Greece and shit.
Yes, yeah, you pour 250K into the country, and now you're a citizen that can't vote, and you're treated much better than the police don't come crack down on your shit when you have a 30-person gathering, during Greek Easter.
Well, yeah, that's one thing. I was talking to some of the, I guess, activist type people out there in Exarchia, and they were saying like one of the biggest things that's pissed off just your average citizen in Greece is that apparently the government got caught like visiting his rich pals and stuff like this, whilst everyone else is meant to stay in lockdown or something.
Americans will know the Gavin Newsom moment, who's this slick, very handsome governor of California, and he's been so fucking brutal with the COVID shit that even when California's numbers were declining, like small business has been crushed there, and he's just like, authoritarian statist that's very popular, kind of like our version of a Justin Trudeau. And Mitsotakis, who's not center right, he's far right. That's prances about in center right garb. He also was like right before the Greek Easter, and you can imagine how important an Orthodox holiday to the Greeks like Greek Easter is. He's like, sorry, we're going to have to make sacrifices. Everyone fuck off. Don't visit your family. No drinking, no lamb on the spit, none of that. And then he had like a very lavish holiday of his own and was caught. So it's the same thing elites are doing all over the place. The Greeks on the left and the post-left absolutely understand the dangers of the pandemic, but they rightly point out that the state is using it for its own ends, and it's fucking over people on the right and the left.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of a perfect storm from what it sounds like. The one thing that I do think though is kind of missing at the minute is the more militant side of things, like the urban guerrillas. Now, I know there's a lot of clashes, and I know clashes in Greek and not in Greece. They're not just, you know, rocks and Molotovs. They're fucking camping stoves, like set up as bombs. Like the whole thing's mad. But still, we've not seen like a resurgence of like actual urban guerrillas like CCF or them kind of groups or the FAI. Like, do you think we might actually end up seeing like new groups emerge, like organized, properly armed groups again? Because it certainly seems to me like the backdrop is almost, I don't want to say perfect for it, but you know what I mean? It does seem like, you know, the perfect storm for it almost.
I always wish somebody would fill me in. Why is it that those guerrillas of the 1970s and 80s had such incredible technical capabilities in that, I mean, 17N used like remote controlled detonated bombs. If you look at the PIRA stuff, like some of their, some of their car bombs and shit were incredibly sophisticated. We know how 17N was able to kill members of the CIA. There was a huge leak of personnel by a mole inside, in our house. But in terms of today's generation of urban guerrillas, first of all, they're unorganized, so we haven't seen a resurgence of a CCF, or the Conspiracies of Cells Fire, a third generation urban guerrilla group, post-left anarchist urban guerrilla group, kind of anti-civ group. I'll see attacks all the time that are claimed under names that I never hear again. Like I saw one that was claimed recently, and it was called the Colonels of Anarcho-Communist Resistance and Cells for the Revolution. And then it's like that one name will pop up, and it's like a lot of these people are probably operating in and out of the same social circles. They all know each other. They're very close, guarded, like, anti-snitch culture. But they're like, I haven't seen any like a cohesive campaign under a single banner since CCF. And CCF was fascinating because they not only had international support from the FAI in Italy, but then also a Mexican and a Chilean cell of CCF were highly active during the. And I was too stupid to realize this the last time we spoke. But one of the reasons CCF targeted like the Mexican embassy during their parcel bombing campaign was because of their relations with the Mexican cell. I haven't seen that. I have not seen. Okay, this is really interesting. And again, we've come full circle. If everyone is scattered and they're freaked out because the state is, in those violent last moments of ideological legitimacy where it's just using its police and its military to just bash everything down and crush everything, then people are kind of scattered and they're running and organization is fucked up. And what we saw with underground movements that popped up first after the junta collapsed, and then again, I guess after the intensity of the economic contagion, financial crisis in Europe, it was kind of after mass mobilization in the streets had settled down. Levels of radicalization were still high, and policing was still very repressive. So in terms of like a sophisticated underground, like clandestine campaign of political violence, I think we're in the phase where folks are thinking about that right now in that country, and there might be some planning and operations, but in terms of operational capability, I don't know where they would get that. That was a unique thing about the 70s, where a large section of the Army, officer corps, as well as the police, might have had left-wing sympathies, but I think that those institutions in the Greek state have been kind of run through the sieve since 1975, where if you're a Greek police officer or in the Navy or in the Army, you're probably pretty nationalistic, and you're probably not piping guns to, post-left anarchists.
Yeah, I do wonder. Like, I think, it will come back eventually. I don't know. Like, it just seems there's such a culture of it there. You know what I mean? And there is actually quite a lot of weapons there still, even though the police have, scooped up a lot of people. But what you said about like these randomly named cells that come out of nowhere, do one event and vanish, like they're always attached to like CCF or remnants of that or one of the communist militias. Like, when the two, I think, or maybe three, was it, the fascists were like shot dead in the street after the killing of Killer P. Like, it was claimed by some random group that had never existed before, and it's like, yeah, they're definitely a member of one of the main groups.
So that might be operational security.
Exactly, like it might be a smart thing to do.
Yes, yeah, and clearly after the anti-fascist driver Pavlos Fyssas, who was stabbed to death by Yorgos Ropakias of Golden Dawn, the neo-Nazi party in Greece. Yeah, you're right. A couple of fellows went by their offices in northern Greece and assassinated, shot dead 2 Golden Dawn members and wounded another one. And like those were clearly CCF dudes, but they just came out they claimed it with another name, right?
Yeah, it was like the revolutionary foot soldiers of something or other, and it was like, yeah, like if there was anyone at that time was going to commit a barefaced murder like that in the street, like it was probably them. But yeah, no, it is interesting, definitely, and I think it's going to a potentially bad place. Like even I was talking to like Greek friends recently, and they were like, "Oh no, man, like it's not going to be as bad as you think. It's not that bad yet." And then like within a week, they were like, "Oh shit, actually I was wrong. Like it is actually really bad." You know what I mean?
So there's a group called Revolutionary Self-Defense, who's one of these underground groups, a cell group, and they actually had a bank robbery last year. And in the middle of the robbery, one member handed off the Kalashnikov to another, and in so doing, shot him in the foot. Like, he didn't have good trigger discipline. And a lot of that group got taken down, but the guy that got shot made it to a safe house, extracted the bullet, and is still somewhere in Greece at a safe house releasing communiques. So the point of that anecdote is that, as you said, Greece is flooded with guns. More guns than any other country in the EU, I think. Not just because of shit ton of guns came out of collapsed Yugo, but ownership of firearms is pretty. It's pretty unrestricted for an EU country in Greece. There's a shitload of guns, and then they also have a big smuggling culture because islands and maritime culture, right? So that lad from Revolutionary Self-Defense, which is an anarchist group, post-left anarchist group, terrorist group, is still about, and so. The police, when they raided all these squats, the Mitsotakis government dumbly thought, "Oh, we're going to find all the explosive material and all the AKs and shit." Nope, wasn't in the squats. They're in safe houses. Like, do you remember that there was a big weapons bust just a few months ago in Kukaki, and they found like plastic explosives?
Yeah, in that tunnel, right?
Yes, it's correct. And it was not the DHKPC bit. This was a actual Greek outfit. So there are still like a number of very serious underground guerrilla groups, such as Revolutionary Self-Defense, which is the group I just brought up, that still have access to weapons. I mean, in the Kukaki raid, they found something like 200 7.62 by 39 rounds, but they didn't find any Kalashnikovs. So where are those rifles at?
Yeah, they're out there somewhere, that's for sure. All right, mate. Is there anything else you want to go over quickly before we wrap this one up? I've got to get moving.
Yep, no, sir. No, that's it, man. I guess the extraordinary thing and why people are so excited about this is that Anglophone press is not writing about it at all, and there's not been a word about it. And it is kind of a really clean full circle of the country's history with the junta from 1974 and New Democracy taking on the Metapolotepsi, or the original democratic mandate. Now that we're in this new Republic of Greece, and then the hunger strike of Kouvoudinas and New Democracy's response to it. I mean, it's been incredibly stupid on New Democracy's part, and had Kouvoudinas himself not given up the hunger strike, which surprised the hell out of me. I imagined him dying in a hospital, this having been a huge bungle for the ND government and Greeks, raging in the streets. But no, that's all I got, man. We'll see where it goes.
Did he release any statement when, obviously he's stopped the hunger strike? Has he said why? I mean, obviously, I guess he doesn't want to die, but has he said anything else?
Yeah, here we go. Actually, 1 second, if I can keep you for 30 seconds. He said, "Let's see. All right, this is from Greek press. So forgive me. I already told you 80% of it's state press, but this is his quote in a statement released through his lawyer, Yona Kortovic. Kuvodinas thanked the quote progressive people unquote who showed solidarity in a quote fight against an inhumane power system. Said there are living social forces who resist arbitrariness, violence, and authoritarianism. This gives us hope." But the guy's just come off 68 days from a fucking hunger strike. I'm surprised he was able to get that out.
Yeah, I'm surprised he even lived, man. So he's not really said anything. I guess we just got to keep an eye on it. Like the whole situation. I think you're right with this. Like I don't see this blowing over, to be honest. I really don't. But I don't know. Let's see what happens.
As the police become more militant, and if they don't get checked, and the government continues to allow them to operate this way, and they sanction this, I'm sure that a lot of the Greeks who've been in the streets are having a conversation about what the underground looks like. Especially, I'm sure a lot of them have been reading his biography in Greek. I'm sure they've been inspired. Some would call that radicalization, but a lot of them are thinking about, hey, what's that life like, and am I willing to go down that path? I'd imagine that's a serious thing right now, and in terms of the existing infrastructure for the Greek underground, it absolutely exists. And weird little fucking groups that people have never heard of, like Revolutionary Self-Defense, have safe houses and places out there. And so, yeah, the infrastructure exists if they want to go that route.
Yeah, man. Where can people see your work, follow your reporting on Greece?
Yeah, I've been publishing stuff in moderndiplomacy.eu here recently on political violence in Greece. I hope to expand into Turkey. And then on Twitter, I am at PotemkinBrain or all one word, wannabe wonk. Thanks, okay, man. It's been cool talking with you.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. Speak soon.
Yes, sir. Later.
Cheers, bro. So that was researcher and analyst Tom Lord speaking about the current ongoing political violence in Greece. Definitely keep an eye on it. As we were speaking about, it's really not looking good. If you like what we're doing here at Popular Front and you want us to keep doing it and you want to see more, go to patreon.com/popularfront to support us, or you can go to popularfront.co/support. But the Patreon is the best way because you get access to bonus episodes, narrated articles, access to the community Discord, a whole series educating people on how to be a journalist without having to go to J school, early release episodes, all sorts. You get a lot for your money. Patreon.com/popularfront. This episode was sponsored by Oracle Coffee Shop in Portland, Oregon, USA. They're an independent coffee shop selling only fair trade products. See them at 3875 Southwest Bond Avenue, 97239. The episode was also sponsored by Grind Core House, a pair of independent coffee shops in Philadelphia, USA. One in South, one in West. Check them out on social media at Grind Core House. The episode was also sponsored by Propagandopolis, an outlet selling and informing people about historical conflict propaganda. Get prints at propagandopolis.com and use the code POPULARFRONT10 to get 10% off. Definitely check them out. If you want to support us directly, go to patreon.com/popularfront, as I said. If you want to see us on social media, it's at PopularFrontCO on Twitter, at popular.front on Instagram, and YouTube is youtube.com/popularfront. Definitely check out our YouTube, subscribe there. We've got documentaries. Our latest one, Ghosts of Karabakh, covering the Nagorno-Karabakh/Artsakh conflict. We went to the front lines to see how the tense ceasefire is faring for the people there in Karabakh. It's not looking good. Unfortunately, YouTube, because they're fucking bastards, the whole channel is demonetized, has been from day one, so we don't make any money on our documentaries. So you'll see the documentary we made Plastic Defense has 1.6 million views, I think it is now. We didn't make a single penny off of that. We can't make any money off of that because YouTube says no, you're not advertiser friendly. So fuck them, and that's why we do this independently. If you want to support us, do subscribe, do share our documentaries. Our latest doc, the Karabakh doc, has been age restricted after a bot army went after it and tried to get it taken down. You can guess which countries those bot armies are from, but yeah, it's age restricted. At least they didn't take it down, but you know, it's 2 warnings it fucking gives you. 2 warnings before you can even watch the documentary, and at the start of the doc we even say there's, you know, graphic imagery, but whatever. But yeah, please do share our documentaries. It's an uphill battle trying to get them out there. If you want to follow me, all my social medias are at Jake_Hanrahan, HANRAHAN. To be honest, these days I'm on social media less and less. I'm really just sick of it all. So if you want to contact me, go to my website, jakehanrahan.com. Try and get hold of me that way. It should be easier. Thank you very much to the higher tier Patreons. They are RX, A Nicole, Manny, Travis Lieberman, Sky Alexander, Cherry, Ben Marshall, Dallas Dunn, Bandit 666, MJ, K Glitter Vulcan, Meredith Waters, Bethany Swoveland, C O'Donnell, Adam H, Ryan Barbadillo, Damian Boyd, Larson 8669, Bjorn Kirsten, Diamond Steen, Jacob, Michael O'Connor, Taylor Kidd, Zach Packard, Todd Cravens, Alexander, Nicholas Butter, Ron Swanson, JD, Jav, Ian Froese, James Cully, Michael Akakan, Ethan Fitzmadrid, Joe Watt, Ed Coulthard, Johnny LaFleur, Clayton Taylor, Helen Degenerate, Mike Barone, Liam Williams, Chris Cusimano, Degenerate Zero Alpha, Jojo Arani, DR, Trey Nance, Amy R, Rubicon, Frank Austin, Amelia Me, Nawaiz, Christina Rivetti, Freya Northman, Ali Hunter, Moody Al Rashid, Bill Wilson, Andrew Hurley, Vida Provost, Brian McLaughlin, Tom Lochrin, Young Wasabi, Tony Bin, Adam Bergsnyder, JL, Sebastian, Stephen Davila, Anthony Kabarak, Dan Dunham, Fletcher Tate, Chad Walker, Diana Gorvanek, Lawrence Abrahams, Peter McCormick from What Bitcoin Did, Emily Molly, Axel Iverson, Christopher Martin, Ryan Sandercock, and Maurice Zumbul. Thank you all very much. Honestly, like when COVID hit, I thought, oh man, we're going to be fucked here. But everybody on the Patreon has kept it going. And ask anyone on the Patreon, if you're not there, we put the work in. There's so much content there, regularly updating. I'd say almost every week, to be honest. This month it was. But yeah, definitely do check out patreon.com/popular front. The more we make there, the more popular front everybody gets, and the more you get on the Patreon as well, exclusive stuff. Music in this episode, the intro was by Home, and the outro was by Sam Black. Check his music at samblackpf.com. And the sound mixing was done by Thomas Griffin at Splicing Block. Check them out, splicingblock.com.